You know those nights where you're driving down an empty highway, the kind of stretch where the only light comes from the faint glow of your headlights? You're alone, the radio's static, and the only sound is the hum of the engine, a steady beat. It's easy to get lost in the rhythm of the road, and maybe that's exactly what happened to me. It started like any other job. Late night, empty roads, a trailer to drop off. It was a company I hadn't heard of, but that didn't matter much. Work was work, and the miles pay the bills. The guy on the phone didn't sound like he knew much either, just told me to pick up a trailer from this place, a warehouse that looked like it had been forgotten by time. He gave me the address and a simple instruction: drop the trailer and go. No questions, no problems. Or so I thought. I'd been trucking for a while, and I'd seen my share of sketchy places, but this one felt off the moment I turned down the gravel road. The fog rolled in thick, smothering everything in its path like some sort of creeping wet blanket. You know the type. The kind that makes it hard to see more than a few feet in front of you. It was like the night swallowed everything, like it was trying to pull me under. The warehouse was, well, it wasn't a warehouse at all. More like a shell of what was once something useful. Broken windows, crumbling walls, and a single light hanging over the front door, swinging in the wind like it was trying to tell me to turn around. But I didn't. Not yet. I was already here, and the job was the job. I parked my rig near the entrance, the wheels crunching over the gravel as I cut the engine. The silence was deafening. No dogs barking, no distant traffic, just the sound of my boots hitting the ground and the faint whoosh of the wind. A voice crackled through my radio, the same guy who'd called earlier. "You there?" "Yeah, I'm here. This the place?" There was a pause. It lasted just long enough for me to start questioning the entire setup. "Yeah, that's the place. Go ahead and load the trailer. Just be quick, all right? We don't want any delays." I didn't like how hurried he sounded, almost like he was scared. "Got it," I said, trying to shake off the weird vibe. I grabbed my flashlight and walked towards the massive steel doors. They creaked open with a protest, the kind of sound that feels like it's echoing in your bones. Inside, it was darker than I expected. Dust hung in the air like a fog, settling over every inch of the space. There were no forklifts, no inventory, just empty shelves and rusting metal parts strewn about. I found the trailer toward the back, half hidden behind an old stack of crates. It was strange, almost pristine in comparison to everything else. No rust, no dirt, just there. Like it had been placed there for me, waiting for me to take it. But something about it didn't sit right. I couldn't explain it, but I had the feeling I was being watched. I pulled the door open, and the first thing that hit me wasn't the smell of stale air or old cardboard. It was the feeling that something had been here recently. There were no obvious signs of life, but it was like the space had been disturbed. I noticed a faint, almost imperceptible mark on the floor. Someone, or something, had been walking around. I shook it off. It was just my nerves getting the best of me. Maybe I hadn't slept enough the night before. It had been a long haul and I was starting to feel it, so I focused on the task at hand. I hooked up the trailer and checked the paperwork. Well, what little paperwork there was. The manifest was just a single sheet of paper, and it looked, well, fake. The company listed on it didn't match anything I could find online. No website, no social media, just a name, Everton Logistics. Ever heard of it? Yeah, neither had I. But like I said, I wasn't about to question it. I was just here to drop off the trailer, not get tangled in some corporate mystery. So I turned around, ready to leave. That's when I saw the shadow. It wasn't much, just a flicker at the corner of my vision. But it was enough to make my blood run cold. I froze, staring into the darkness of the warehouse. The air had grown thicker somehow. The fog outside had crept inside, curling its way through the cracks in the walls, winding around the columns and old crates. But the shadow, it wasn't the fog. It moved too sharply, too quickly. I stepped back toward the truck, gripping the handle of the door like it was a lifeline. I didn't know why, but the urge to get out of there was overwhelming. My instincts were screaming at me, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, almost like someone or something was pacing, waiting for me to make a move. I jumped into the truck, slammed the door shut, and started the engine. The trailer hitched, and I floored it, spinning the wheels as the truck lurched forward, the gravel kicking up behind me. My headlights flashed through the fog, and for a split second I thought I saw something, no, someone, standing at the doorway of the warehouse, watching me leave. I didn't look back after that. I didn't want to. But as I drove away, my mind kept racing. That shadow, the weird vibe, the company that didn't exist. What the hell was going on, and why didn't I feel like I was alone on that road? The fog outside clung to the air like a cold, wet blanket as I sat inside my truck, staring out the windshield, my mind racing. My hand still clutched my phone, though I hadn't touched it in minutes. I was half tempted to throw it out the window, just to rid myself of the nagging thoughts swirling in my head, but that's not how I was built. I had to know. The need to figure this out clawed at me, gnawing at my insides like some kind of relentless parasite. I'd barely made it back to the motel, probably about 10 minutes ago, when I started my search, trying to make sense of the bizarre situation. But as the minutes turned into an hour, the frustration began to mount. I couldn't find anything about Everton Logistics. No address, no phone number, no social media presence, nothing. Sure, I'd come across some ghost companies before, startups, that barely made it off the ground, but this felt different. Like I was staring at a wall that had been wiped clean on purpose, as though it wasn't supposed to exist at all. I swiped through my phone again, searching for anything that might offer a clue, but the results were just as useless as before. I checked out the warehouse address again, and once more it came up blank. It wasn't even listed as a business location. In fact, the whole road that led to it wasn't on the map either. It was as if it had been erased. I don't know why, but I felt a cold shiver slide down my spine. If there was one thing I knew, it was that this wasn't normal. There was no way a trailer could just show up in a warehouse that didn't exist, under the umbrella of a company that didn't exist either. The pieces didn't fit. That's when the realization hit me. Hard, the trailer, the shadow, the fog. It wasn't just the company that had no trace, it was the entire operation. Everything about this job screamed wrong, and yet I still went through with it. That terrified me more than anything. It was like I had stepped into something much bigger than I could have possibly anticipated. The shadow I saw in the warehouse, that wasn't just a trick of the light. It was real, and I wasn't about to pretend otherwise. I needed to find out more, and I needed to act fast, but what? I stared at my phone, letting out a frustrated sigh as I rubbed my temples. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, lurking in the shadows of the fog, waiting for me to make a move. I gripped the wheel of my truck tighter, my knuckles turning white as I tried to center myself. I had to approach this, like I was handling any other load, one step at a time. But damn, something told me that wouldn't be enough. The internet's dead end. I wasn't about to give up. Not yet. I tried everything I could think of, spending the next half hour diving deeper into the web, using every search term I could imagine. Everton Logistics trailer delivery, abandoned warehouse, missing company, and even something as bizarre as fog and shadows company warehouse. Anything that might point me in the right direction. What came back was either pure nonsense or pages that had no connection to the things I was looking for. None of it made sense. The more I searched, the more I realized that the warehouse, the company, everything was designed to stay hidden. No website, no phone number, no records, nothing. It felt like it had been wiped from existence, like someone or something didn't want it to be found. I even looked up the phone number the guy gave me. It went to voicemail again and again. No answer, no clues. I gritted my teeth. This was bad. Something was seriously off. I slammed my phone onto the passenger seat, deciding to take a different approach. If I couldn't rely on the internet, I'd have to rely on old-school legwork. I wasn't exactly thrilled about going back out into the fog again, but I couldn't shake the pull. I needed answers, and maybe, just maybe, the fog would reveal more if I took a second look. Driving back, the night calls again. I wasn't ready to go back just yet, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no other choice. If I was going to figure out what the hell was going on, I had to go back. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about what I'd seen, what I'd felt. I couldn't leave it alone. By the time I decided, the fog was thicker and the cold air outside seemed to press harder against the truck. I started the engine and drove into the night, my headlights cutting through the blanket of mist, illuminating only a few feet in front of me. The road felt longer this time. The eerie emptiness of it all seemed more suffocating, like the world around me had gone still, like everything was holding its breath. I followed the same road that led me to the warehouse, and as I got closer, something tugged at the back of my mind, a sense that I wasn't supposed to be here. The longer I drove, the heavier the feeling became, and when the outline of the warehouse emerged in the distance, it didn't look any more inviting. If anything, it felt even more foreboding. The warehouse loomed in the fog like some ancient decaying monument, imposing and silent. It looked even worse than before, like it had aged 100 years since I last saw it. I parked the truck a little further back this time, out of sight of the entrance. The streetlights barely lit up anything, but the fog seemed to give the place a kind of ethereal glow. I grabbed my flashlight and took one last deep breath. This was it. Time to figure out what the hell was really going on. The walk to the warehouse. The gravel under my boots crunched as I walked towards the warehouse, the fog wrapping around me in a suffocating embrace. The air was thick, heavy with moisture, and the cold seeped through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end as I approached the warehouse doors, the very same doors I had entered just hours ago. This time, I wasn't alone. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Every little sound felt amplified, every creak of the building, every snap of a twig, as if the warehouse itself was alive, holding its breath, waiting for me to make a move. I shone my flashlight at the ground, looking for any signs that I had missed before. There was the same dull mark on the floor, a track where something heavy had been dragged. This time I noticed something else. Near the back, where the trailer had been, the floor was scratched up, gouged in places like something or someone had been dragging something across the floor. I squatted down and touched the scratches. My fingers came away with a strange, sticky residue. It was a dark red, almost black, and it stuck to my fingertips like tar. I didn't want to think about what it could be, but the back of my mind already knew. It didn't take much longer to confirm that I wasn't alone in here. I heard it again, the footsteps, slow, methodical. I froze, my heart thudding in my chest, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. I wasn't imagining it. This wasn't just a warehouse, and I wasn't the only one hunting for answers. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, not daring to make a sound as the footsteps echoed in the vast empty warehouse. The faint creak of the wooden beams above me groaned in the silence, almost like they were responding to the eerie presence creeping around. I squinted into the dark, trying to make out any shapes through the fog, but it was as if the air itself refused to let anything be seen. My flashlight flickered, adding to the sense of unease that crept along my spine. It felt like time was stretching out, and I was the only one stuck in it. Each second felt like an eternity, and yet there was no escape. The steps grew louder. It wasn't just one set of footsteps anymore. There was a second, then a third. The sound seemed to echo from every direction, but there was no one in sight. I wanted to turn and run, but something kept me rooted to the spot, frozen in fear. I knew I couldn't outrun whatever was here, not in this thick fog, not in this endless warehouse. The air seemed to grow colder with every passing second. It wasn't just the chill from the fog, it felt wrong, like the temperature itself had dropped because something unnatural was watching me. I clutched the flashlight tightly, my knuckles turning white. The beam swept over the dusty floor, the scratches, the marks, and then I saw it. A figure. Just for a split second, I saw the shadow move against the mist, and then it was gone. I didn't know whether it had been my imagination or something more real, but the sudden spike of terror was enough to send my pulse racing. "Who's there?" I called, out trying to steady my voice, but it came out shaky, weak. The footsteps stopped. A long silence stretched between us. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Then a low, guttural voice broke through the stillness. "You shouldn't have come here." I whipped around, scanning the fog. The voice had been so close, yet there was no one in sight. "Who are you?" I demanded, taking a step backward, my heart hammering in my chest. The words felt hollow in the vast emptiness, swallowed by the fog. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving so quietly that it was as if they were gliding. I couldn't make out any details at first, just a shape. But as it came closer, the fog seemed to pull away, just enough to reveal a face. I didn't know what to make of it at first. It wasn't human, not entirely. The features were off, wrong, eyes too wide, skin stretched too tight across the bones. There was something strange about its mouth too, like it had been stitched closed. I couldn't look away. I wasn't sure if I wanted to run or if I was too afraid to move. What are you? I gasped, backing up until my heels hit a pile of old crates. The figure tilted its head slightly, almost in curiosity, as if it wasn't used to being questioned. Then, slowly, it reached into the folds of its coat and pulled something out, a rusted key, its edges worn down by time. It held it up between us, dangling it in front of my face. "This is what you've been searching for," the figure said in a rasping whisper. Before I could react, the creature turned its back to me and walked toward the far corner of the warehouse, leaving me in a stunned daze. My mind raced to process what had just happened, but it couldn't. None of it made sense. I knew I should leave, that I was in over my head. But the compulsion to find out more, to know everything, was too strong. I didn't know who that thing was or why it had shown itself to me, but it felt like I was being pulled into something bigger than I could ever have imagined. With hesitant steps, I followed. The fog seemed thicker as I approached the corner where the figure had disappeared. The dim light from my flashlight flickered as I moved, and the shadows in the corners of the warehouse seemed to stretch and sway as though they were alive. I turned the corner, and there it was, a door, hidden behind a pile of debris. I hadn't noticed it before. The key, the figure. I couldn't ignore it. I inserted the key into the lock, feeling a strange heat radiate from it as I turned it. The door creaked open, and I braced myself for whatever lay beyond. A room of whispers. The door opened to a narrow hallway, dimly lit by a single hanging light bulb. The walls were lined with cracked, yellowed papers. Some of them were newspaper clippings. Others were handwritten notes smeared with ink and age. My pulse quickened as I stepped inside, the air growing heavier with each step. I could hear faint whispers, barely audible, like voices lost in the mist. The sound made my skin crawl, and I instinctively reached for my phone, but the battery had died earlier. I swallowed hard. This was insane. I should have turned back. But then I saw it, a massive corkboard on the far wall. It was covered with maps, photos, and red string crisscrossing all over the place, connecting names and places I didn't recognize. There were newspaper clippings about strange disappearances. There were dates from years ago. Some of the faces in the photos seemed familiar, though I couldn't place them. And then I saw something that froze my blood. A picture of me. A photo of me standing outside the warehouse, taken from a distance. My heart dropped to my stomach. There was no way anyone could have taken that photo. I hadn't seen anyone else around. How did they know? How could they have known? I reached out to touch the picture, my fingers trembling as I traced the edges. And that's when I noticed it. A small handwritten note attached to the photo. "The fog is always watching." I jerked my hand back as if I'd been burned. I could feel the cold air swirling around me, the whispers growing louder, like 1,000 voices murmuring all at once. The fog outside had crept into the building too, just a thin veil at first, but it was slowly thickening, filling the room with an oppressive, suffocating presence. I had to get out, but the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash, and the whispers intensified. The air grew colder still, and I felt a cold, clammy hand grip my shoulder from behind. I spun around, but there was nothing there. The shadows had shifted, and I could hear something moving, slithering in the darkness. And then, as I reached for the doorknob, the voices whispered again, clearer now, closer. "You should have never come." I don't know how much time passed after the door slammed shut, or how long I stood frozen in the middle of the room. Every part of me screamed to escape, but my legs felt like lead, and my chest was so tight it was hard to breathe. The whispers seemed to grow louder, almost rhythmic, as though they were closing in, drowning me in their murmur. The fog was thick now, swirling in the corners of the room, seeping under the cracks of the door, crawling like a living thing. I needed to move. I couldn't just stand here, trapped, letting the fog consume me. Shaking off the paralysis, I reached for the doorknob. But as soon as my fingers brushed against it, the whispers stopped, dead silent. It was so sudden that it felt like the entire world had paused. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on me, thick as the fog around me. I tugged on the knob, but the door didn't budge. Panic shot through me like electricity. No, no, no. I slammed my shoulder against it, but the door wouldn't move. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in around me, the fog pressing in closer with every second. My breath was ragged now, and my hands were slick with sweat. The photographs on the wall, the one of me, were staring at me, their yellowed faces seemingly alive with some terrible secret. Then I heard it again, a soft scuffling sound. I turned, slowly, the flashlight in my hand trembling with every movement. The fog swirled around my feet, and then I saw it. Them. Figures emerging from the shadows, their forms barely visible, like ghosts caught between this world and the next. Their faces were obscured, but their eyes, I'll never forget those eyes, hollow, empty, like black bottomless pits. They were standing just outside the pool of light from my flashlight, not moving, but their eyes, those hollow, endless voids, were fixed on me, their gaze suffocating. I took a step back, but the scuffling noise grew louder, closer. The figures weren't moving, but it was as if their very presence had forced the air to still, to become dense with something unnatural. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the fog had infiltrated my lungs. Another figure emerged from the fog, closer now. It was human, at least it looked human, but its eyes, God, its eyes, they were nothing but hollow sockets. The skin around them was stretched thin, like the flesh was pulled tight against a skull that had been hollowed out long ago. It came closer, and I stumbled backward, my foot catching on the debris. I fell hard onto the cold, dusty floor, scraping my palms against the rough surface. The flashlight fell from my hand and rolled away, leaving me in darkness. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, and finally the fear broke through, and I screamed. A primal, desperate sound that echoed through the fog-choked warehouse. The hollow-eyed figure didn't respond. Instead, it reached into its coat, pulling something out, something glinting in the dim light. I could barely make it out, but I knew. What it was a key. The same kind of key the first figure had shown me. It held it out to me as if offering it. I wanted to run. I needed to run. But my body felt rooted in place, like I was stuck in quicksand. The figure's hollow gaze pierced into me, freezing me to the spot. "Take it," the figure rasped, its voice hollow and distant, as though it had come from the depths of some dark abyss. "Take the key, and you'll understand." I wanted to scream again, to fight, but I couldn't. Something about those words, about the key, felt important, like it was the only way out. I didn't know why. Maybe it was the fear, or maybe something deeper inside me, a part of me that had been buried, hidden, was listening to the fog, to the whispers. But something tugged at me, an instinct, urging me forward. I took a shaky step, then another, until I was close enough to reach out and take the key from its hand. The moment my fingers brushed against the cold metal, the temperature in the room dropped drastically. The air was now heavy, charged, almost alive. The figure stepped back, its eyes still locked onto mine, as if waiting for something. "What? What do you want?" I asked, my voice cracking. My fingers gripped the key, but my mind was racing. None of this made sense. None of it should be happening. But the figure didn't answer. Instead, it turned and began walking slowly toward the far end of the room, its movement stiff, like it was part of the fog itself. The whispers started again, low at first, almost imperceptible, but then they began to grow, rising in intensity, as if the fog itself was speaking to me, urging me to follow. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed to run, to leave, but my legs didn't respond. Something about the key, the promise of understanding, pulled me forward. I followed. The fog thickened with each step, and the temperature continued to plummet. My breath formed visible clouds in front of me as I walked deeper into the darkness, following the hollow-eyed figure. The walls around me seemed to close in, and the floor was slick with moisture. The silence between the whispers grew heavy, almost deafening. We reached a narrow hallway that I hadn't noticed before. It was barely wide enough for me to squeeze through, and as I passed by, the walls seemed to close in even tighter, pressing against me as if I was being swallowed whole. At the end of the hall was a door, a heavy iron door with intricate engravings carved into its surface, symbols I couldn't understand, but that felt wrong somehow. They seemed to shift and writhe in the darkness. The figure stopped in front of the door, waiting. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I had come too far to turn back now. I could feel the pull, the need to know, and it was stronger than the fear. Clawing at my chest, I raised my hand to the door, trembling as I inserted the key into the lock. The moment it clicked open, the whispers ceased, leaving only the sound of my heartbeat hammering in my ears. The door creaked open, revealing what lay beyond. What I saw I can barely describe. It was a room, no, a space, where time and reality seemed to bleed into each other. Shadows and light swirled in an endless dance, and in the center of it all was something that shouldn't have been. A figure, much larger than any of the others. Its body was twisted, contorted in a way that defied nature. Its hollow eyes locked onto me, and as it reached out toward me, I realized with a chill that its eyes weren't just hollow. They were empty, and I was about to be consumed. I stood frozen, the heavy iron door now wide open, and the space beyond it seemed to breathe, almost alive. A foul, cold air seemed to pour from the room, swirling like the fog that clung to the warehouse. My chest tightened as a guttural sound echoed from within, low like a growl from something ancient, something predatory. The creature, the thing that had been waiting for me in the darkened room, was massive, its shape hard to define. It was like looking at a silhouette against the fog, its form too large, too unnatural to comprehend. Its hollow eyes, black as night, were locked on me, and it saw me. I could feel it, piercing through my skin, through my very bones, into the deepest parts of my soul. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The fear was paralyzing, settling in my bones like ice, sinking deeper and deeper with every second. My pulse thudded in my ears, drowning out everything else, and I couldn't tear my gaze away from those eyes. But then the creature, it, took a step forward. The floor beneath me seemed to groan under its weight, the entire building quivering in response. And that's when I realized the fog wasn't just around me, it was everywhere. It had seeped into every corner of this place like a living, breathing thing. It was thickening, its chill deepening. The air felt heavier, like the weight of 100 years of forgotten pain pressed down on me. I stumbled backward, but my legs felt like they were trapped in quicksand. I wanted to run. I needed to run, but there was nowhere to go. The creature kept moving, inching closer, each step a terrible promise, and then it spoke. It wasn't a voice in the way I understood it. There were no words, no clear language. It was something deeper, a resonance that filled the air, vibrating in my skull. But I understood. Somehow I understood. You should never have come. The words hung in the air, weighty, as if they had been carved into the very fabric of reality itself. The fog twisted around me, seeping into my lungs, filling my senses with an unbearable cold. I took a step back, my foot caught on something. A piece of broken wood or debris, I couldn't tell. And in that moment of weakness I tripped and fell, crashing to the cold, damp floor. My hands hit the ground with a sickening thud, and I felt the sting of the fall shoot up my arm. A sharp, rattling breath left my lips, and I looked up just in time to see the creature take another slow step forward. This time it was too close. Its eyes, those empty black voids, moved closer, and something inside me snapped. My body flooded with a raw, primal fear, but also a desperate need to survive. I forced myself up, pushing my hands against the floor, my fingers scrabbling for something, anything to grab hold of. My heart hammered in my chest, my breath ragged, my body screaming for escape. But then the creature did something I didn't expect. It stopped. It paused. It looked down at me. Or, at least I thought it did. There was no visible expression, no movement, but I could feel it watching me, waiting, and for the first time I realized the creature wasn't just standing there to intimidate me. It wasn't here to kill me, at least not yet. It was waiting for something more. A deep guttural hum rumbled from within it, so low it vibrated in my chest. It stretched out its arms, and as it did, the fog thickened, swirling faster, more violently. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned. Louder now, more insistent. The fog, it seemed, was alive. It wasn't just a random mist. It had a purpose, and whatever that purpose was, I was its target. I gasped, my eyes flicking to the sides of the room, searching for any sign of escape. The walls were closing in, the doorway I had come through now barely visible through the thick cloud. The creature's presence loomed over me, and it was like I was drowning in a sea of blackness and cold. There was no way out, no clear path forward. And then the whispering grew into something else, a voice low and distorted, but unmistakably clear. "You are part of this now." A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't just that I was trapped here. It wasn't just the fear or the fog. It was something deeper, something older. The room, the building, the fog, they were all connected. And somehow I was connected to them now, tied to something ancient and dark. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was never meant to leave. The creature took another step forward, and this time, its hand, its grotesque, long, bony fingers reached out to me. It felt like an eternity as it closed the gap between us, the fog swirling around my body, pulling me in, tugging at my limbs. I closed my eyes. I couldn't escape. I couldn't fight. But then, something broke. Through the haze of fear and confusion, a single thought, a spark of clarity, the key. I reached into my pocket, feeling it there, cold against my skin. The key that had brought me here, the key that had opened the door. Maybe, just maybe, it could be the key to ending this nightmare. But the creature wasn't done yet. It was almost upon me. I could feel its presence, its cold breath on my skin. I gripped the key with trembling fingers and raised it. And in that moment, the fog swirled around me, the air thickening as the creature's hollow eyes stared into mine, expecting something, demanding something from me. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I thrust the key into the air, letting its cold metal surface catch the dim light. The creature halted. A sound, almost like a scream, echoed through the room. The fog recoiled, pulling back from the key as if it were fire. And the creature, it stumbled backward, as if the key had burned it. The whispers intensified. The fog thickened again. But something had changed. Something had broken. And I knew, deep down, that I had triggered something much darker than I could understand. I wasn't going to escape, not yet. Not until the fog had taken its toll. But I had the key. And for the first time, I realized I had power, at least enough to fight back, but at what cost? The air was heavier now, and the fog, thick with secrets and regret, felt like it had an oppressive weight pushing against me from all sides. The creature, that grotesque amalgamation of shadow and nightmare, had retreated for the moment, but I could feel its presence lingering, coiled in the mist. My hand still gripped the key, the cold metal a reminder of how far I'd fallen into this nightmare. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest as I fought the rising panic. The whispers that had haunted me since I'd first entered this cursed place had grown louder, but now they weren't just whispers. No, now they were voices, real, tangible voices coming from all around me, mournful, desperate, regretful. "Help us," they pleaded. Get out while you still can." I shook my head, trying to dispel the thoughts. It was madness. All of this was madness. But deep down, I knew there was some twisted, sick truth buried in all of it. And whether, if I wanted to admit it or not, I had a part to play in whatever was happening here. The key, that strange, unearthly object I'd found at the center of the warehouse, wasn't just some tool of escape. It wasn't just a random piece of metal that had happened to fall into my hands. I knew that now. It had chosen me. I had been chosen in some way to hold it, to wield it. It wasn't just a lock or a door I had to open. It was something more, something ancient. As the fog churned around me, I could feel it like an electric charge in the air. The whispers faded, but something far darker took their place. The air was thick with a sense of finality, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the inevitable choice. And I realized then, there was no escaping this place, no going back. The fog had claimed me, just as it had claimed so many before. But why me? I had come here for a simple task, just a delivery. Pick up a trailer, drive it to an abandoned warehouse, no big deal. But that was before the fog had found me, before the walls of the warehouse closed in on me, trapping me in a world I didn't understand, a world that had been waiting for me. The creature, the guardian of this place, wasn't a simple monster. It was a part of the warehouse, a part of the fog, a part of whatever curse had woven this entire nightmare together. It had been there for longer than I could even imagine, and it was waiting for someone like me to come along. But now, the truth. That had been hovering on the edges of my mind was starting to solidify. I was no longer just an innocent bystander. I was a key. The creature's eyes, those hollow pits of darkness, flashed in my mind. I could see them even now, burning with an ancient knowledge I couldn't comprehend. And as much as I wanted to flee, to run far from this place and never look back, I knew I couldn't. The fog would follow me. The creature would follow me. The whispers would follow me. It wasn't just about leaving anymore, it was about understanding. There was a sudden pressure in the air, and I felt the ground beneath me tremble. I turned, my body moving on instinct. The fog was twisting, swirling, moving faster than before, as if it was alive, feeding off my fear. And then I saw it, a shifting shape in the distance, a form emerging from the mist. The creature was back, but this time it wasn't as terrifying as before. In fact, for a moment, it almost seemed familiar. The shape before me was not the towering, grotesque thing I had seen earlier. It was something more human. At least it looked human, at first. The creature's body, though still misshapen and alien, was suddenly adorned with the same dark symbols that had been painted on the walls of the warehouse. Symbols that I had seen in the corners of my vision. Symbols that had called to me, taunting me to learn their meaning. And then, as the fog parted, I saw it. The face of the creature. It wasn't a face at all. Not truly. It was an empty void, a mask of darkness, where its eyes should have been. But beneath that mask there was something I could sense, something more. You don't understand, do you? The creature's voice rasped, a sound that vibrated through the air like a low hum. I couldn't answer. I was too stunned, too terrified, too overwhelmed by the sight in front of me. The air had grown thick, heavy with the weight of some unimaginable truth I wasn't ready for. You think you were brought here by chance. The creature's voice deepened, resonating in my bones. You think you were just another delivery driver passing through, but you were chosen, just like the others, before you. I took a shaky breath, my heart racing. The creature's words felt like they were sinking into me, burrowing beneath my skin. There was no denying it now. I wasn't just a victim of this place. I was part of it. This place, this fog, this warehouse, this curse. It's alive. The creature's voice echoed in the mist. It has fed on the souls of the lost for centuries, and it will continue to do so. But you are different. You hold the key to the next chapter, the next cycle. I looked down at the key in my hand, the cold metal now pulsing with a faint light. It was no longer just an object. It was part of the warehouse, part of the fog, and most horrifying of all, it was part of me. The truth crashed down on me like a tidal wave. I was waiting for you, the creature whispered, its voice now soft and hypnotic. Waiting for you to unlock the final piece. I felt something stir deep within me, a memory that wasn't mine, a knowledge that had been implanted in my mind the moment I touched the key. The fog wasn't just a barrier, it was a portal to something darker, something far older, and I had just opened it. The fog around me seemed to pulse, the air, growing thicker, heavier. The creature stepped closer, its form shifting, merging with the fog. I could feel the pull of it, the gravity of this place. It was drawing me in, wrapping me in its grasp, suffocating me. You belong here now. The creature's voice was a whisper, a sickening lullaby. You will feed it. You will become part of the fog, part of the curse. I lifted the key one final time, my grip tightening as the truth became clear. The key wasn't just a tool to unlock this place. It was a choice. A choice that would bind me to the fog forever, or a choice that could tear everything apart. And then I realized the final truth. I wasn't meant to leave. I was meant to replace someone else. The fog didn't just want me, it needed me. And if I didn't give it what it wanted, it would consume me, like it had consumed everyone before me. I had become a part of the fog, just like the others. The truth wasn't that I was a victim. The truth was that I was the next part of the curse, and there was no escaping it now. As I stood there, the key burning hot in my hand, I could feel the fog closing in again. The creature's presence was everywhere, suffocating, relentless. I could feel it now, the weight of the curse settling in. The whispers had stopped, but the creature's words were etched into my mind. I had been chosen, and I wasn't leaving. Not ever. The fog had me now, forever.